Hello friends, welcome to the Hydro Chronicle podcast with your host, Rich Hamilton.
Hello and welcome back to the Hydro Chronicle podcast. Today's episode was recorded at Hemp and CBD expo here in the UK. I managed to catch up with Phil Monk. Phil Monk is a therapeutic cannabis practitioner and the founder of We the Undersigned. You can find out more information at www.wtuhq.org. We had a great conversation. I'm looking forward to you listening to it. How's it going, buddy?
It's going.
It's going. How are you finding the show? We're obviously here at the Hemp and CBD Expo in Birmingham.
I think it's been a really good show from what I've seen of this one. It's the second time We the Undersigned have had a stall here.
Yep.
We have an information stall for our campaign group that we run.
Okay.
And the organisers have really looked after us this time. I mean, they looked after us last time, but even more so.
Oh, fantastic.
The amount of floor space we've got so we can actually welcome people and just... People, when they come to our stand, they sit down and they want to ask questions, they want to share their experiences. So we've got a lovely chill space, basically, where folks can come and chill.
Well, that's good for them. I mean, I think they're trying to give back to the industry and to the community as much as they can. So by allocating a little bit more space, like you say, is perfect. 'Cause it just brings those people in that maybe don't know too much about the medicine and they want to find out a little bit more, and it's a great environment for them to do that.
Yeah, totally, and I would say they leveled the playing field for us, because WT wouldn't be able to be here if it were not for the expos letting us be here without us having to pay by the square footage, so to speak.
Yeah, and
which, you know,
the expos can get expensive. They get expensive really quick.
Yeah.
And it's not just the stand space, it's also people's time and the setup and the cost. It can run fast quickly.
Yes.
So a little bit more about your organisation. Do you want to tell us all about it?
Yeah, sure. We're called We the Undersigned have a human sovereign right to cannabis, thankfully known as WTU for short.
Okay.
I set the group up in 2018.
Okay.
Basically, I got a bit angry. The government lies, the misinformation.
Yeah.
We had Billy Caldwell, Murray Gray and Alfie Dingley in the news at the time.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know about the truth about cannabis and knowing what the government have known and how they're capitalising from it, I got a bit angry. And I decided to I wanted to set out on a quest to find a human rights solicitor to make a human rights challenge against cannabis prohibition. And I thought, well, it's more than just me. You know, it affects everyone. Why should I just have my right to use it? Why shouldn't everyone have the same right?
Yeah.
So I was in various other campaign groups, UPA, UKCSC, Normal, Medical Marijuana UK. I was, as a member, an advocate, just sharing my thoughts. I'd been there for a few years. So I just shared into these groups, you know, I've bloody had a big rant.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to write this letter to every human rights solicitor in the country that I can find. Would anyone like to undersign to my letter and make it about us, we, and not just me?
Yeah.
I went out, took my daughter to Taekwondo for an hour and a half. I came back and my phone had melted from notifications. And I suddenly had to set up a Facebook group, which I'd never done before.
Right.
And I had to give it a name, and I think, what on earth do I call it? Oh. What am I asking? I'm asking people to undersign to my letters, and what am I saying? Well, we've got a human sovereign right to cannabis, which is why we have this ridiculously long name. We, the Undersigned, have a human sovereign right to cannabis.
Yeah.
The group now we're mainly in the Facebook community. We've got a private group in there. We have a public page there. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and a few other platforms, but most of our community activities in Facebook. We've got nearly 5,800 members in there now.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing how that idea has grown into a community.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
We now support each other through court cases, through bursts, through fines, through illness, everything you can imagine really, marital breakups, death, all sorts. It's become a real community. People fall out and make up and everything. And we've united to make this human rights legal challenge. Took over 12 months to find a solicitor willing.
Wow.
Everyone said, too expensive, too political, and will take too long. Then after a year, I eventually had a new firm started, and someone shared into the group a news report about this new cannabis law firm, Mackerel Turner Garrett.
Right.
The article was about Robert Jaffe, so I thought, well, I'll write to him then, like I've written to all these others.
Yeah.
I fired off the email that I'd sent to all these solicitors around the country, and he got back in touch with me, and we had a good long chat about it. And You said it's very political and very expensive, and it'll take a long time. But if you want to go for it and you think you can get the funds for it, suppose there's 5 million cannabis consumers in the UK. If we could just get £1 off each of them, we can take the government to court, no problem.
Yeah.
So that was the idea of crowdfunding a legal case against the government. We now have on the Crowd Justice fundraiser platform, no more government war on the CannaCommunity, which is what our case is. They call it a war on cannabis. There's no war on cannabis, it's a war on us.
Yeah, that's
the
their
government,
terminology.
that's their terminology. Now they say it's a war on cannabis. There's no war on cannabis. There's no cannabis in prison, it's people.
No.
It's a war on me, you, our way of life, our preferred way of life.
And our rights.
This is what we believe, WTU. We have fundamental human rights to the freedom of consciousness, the right to a private life, the right to our own beliefs and practices, the right to free assembly. And the government stamps on those rights when it comes to cannabis specifically, on the false allegation that cannabis is a harmful Schedule 1 drug of no therapeutic value, and we must be prosecuted to protect us from this dangerous drug. When that is the biggest load of lies ever. If you want to talk about the harms, 1 in 4,000 might get a mental episode from it. And then when you find out the government, and they have GW Pharmaceuticals that got over 100 patents on cannabinoids.
Did they?
Yeah, I think 108 was the last I counted, maybe 6 weeks ago.
Wow.
108 patents on different cannabinoid profiles for specific conditions.
That's criminal in itself.
Well, this is a plant with no therapeutic value. So really, I think it was 568 billion might have been what they were worth on the exchange at last time when I was looking. That's a lot of billions of dollars for a plant with no therapeutic value that they've made from patent. Now that's just through Epidiolex and Sativex, but they've got so many other products in the pipeline. While they would prosecute me and others for accessing the natural plant for whatever condition we need.
Where do you think that's going to go with the patents on those cannabinoids?
Well, my belief is we're witnessing the corporate takeover, the pharmaceutical manipulation of the endocannabinoid system to capitalise on the potential of cannabis.
Do you think it's to maximise the potential or to maximise their profits?
It's all about money.
Yeah.
It's entirely about money because they can't patent cannabis. It's a plant. It's not an invention. What they can patent is the extraction method and the delivery method and the ratios and the concentrations of the cannabinoid profiles. That's what they patent. So like people talk about Rick Simpson or what the folks call it. If you have a one-to-one tincture, they could potentially patent this particular recipe, if you will, and a method and a delivery. And if you infringe any of that, that's where they've got rights over it. So not the cannabis itself, not the cannabinoid itself, but the process, the delivery, and the constitution of it.
Where do you think the big corps are heading? Do you think they're heading towards a flower market, or do you think they're heading to sort of a tablet, sort of controlled dosage market where they can sort of put their other things in it? Which way do you think it's going?
If I have my way, not that way.
No.
In the UK, for some absurd reason I've yet to get to the bottom of, flowers are frowned upon and prohibited. So I don't see it naturally going that way. At the same time, the hemp flowers, as the people called them, CBD bud, that was a successful, thriving market, and people were protecting their health by going to licensed shops or reputable vendors that had their cannabis flowers, low THC cannabis flowers, from a licensed or a reputable chain of suppliers. So anyone that wanted to access cannabis were able to do so, not high THC, fair enough, just low THC, but out of the criminal market, which protects them. Now that they've shut down all these CBD bud shops, where are people going to go for their flower? Because people will still want flower no matter what. So it just increases harms now because people haven't got at least that option for low THC. So I feel they would rather have synthesized, patentable, tablet form cannabis treatment. Now, it doesn't work as well when you break it down. Mother Nature, God, whatever you want to refer to, intended for cannabis to be as it is, and for humans to come along and ingest it. Traditionally eating, actually, humans would have used this as food. the seeds, the oils, the flowers, the leaves even, because they've got so much nutrients in it. To me, it's a war on our health, it's a war on our homeostasis. I was a teacher, I didn't mention that, so I used to teach 4 subjects. So I was academically trained on how to research, to write a PGCE and things like that. You've got to do a dissertation, you've got to do a lot of research. So when I became ill and incapacitated, I used that skill to look into cannabis. And that's when I found out some quite remarkable things.
Yeah.
Namely, it's not harmful,
Well, no, I think that's the key. I think there's still sort of minds and hearts are changing.
Definitely.
But I think the corporate machine are trying to steer that boat into a different direction where it should go.
We see it every day. I've been a campaigner, I'll say, not an activist, because I can't move out my chair half the time, so I'm not very active. I've been a campaigner since 2014, when I nearly died from pharmaceutical drugs and decided the recreational drug I'd been using all my life actually helped me,
right,
and didn't do anything to harm, whereas all the stuff the doctor was giving me was nearly killing me.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what was it that...
Sure. Turns out I've got this condition called chronic myofascial pain from joint hypermobility spectrum disorder.
Right, don't ask me to spell that.
No, I won't. I have to take a deep breath just to say it.
Yeah.
Basically means my collagen is faulty and my muscles and ligaments and tendons tear for no good reason. My joints partially or sometimes fully dislocate. All of my abdominal organs are in constant spasms and not very nice conditions. And what everyone does, I went to the doctor and they gave me their drugs, and I went through the usual ibuprofen, paracetamol, cocodamol, looked through them all. Tramadol gave me, let me try and think, that was a bowel and bladder cancer scare. Beta blockers gave me a brain hemorrhage scare, and citalopram gave me a mini stroke scare. And these were all side effects that each one hospitalised me, and I had to go through several days investigations until they determined it wasn't those other things. Oh, it's the side effects from your medicines, Mr. Moon. That's not medicine, that's killing me.
Yeah.
I came home and I thought, the cannabis never hurt me. And I didn't even know I used cannabis for pain at this point. I hadn't realised. I don't call it medical cannabis. I hadn't realised I was a therapeutic cannabis consumer.
Right.
Now I'm a therapeutic cannabis practitioner. Subtle difference. One's a consumer, one's a practitioner. In other words, I go from the whole seed all the way through to my flower or oil.
Start to finish.
Yeah, it's a whole practice. So I'm a practitioner for therapeutic purposes as well as others. But when I was discharged out of hospital, my kids had been at my bedside, are you going to die, Daddy? No, it's not nice. It's traumatising for me and them,
Yeah.
And having to say I'm an honest man, I can't tell a lie. So, it's like, I don't know, kids, I might die. I can't tell them, no, I'm not going to die, kids, because I might.
Wow.
So when I came home, I said to my kids, I said, look, guys, something that's always helped me, manages my condition, doesn't cause me any problems, but the government tell me it's bad for me and I shouldn't have it. And my daughter said, well, you better write them a letter and tell them they're wrong then, Dad. I'm a bit of a letter writer.
So you did?
I did. Well, I wrote to them and told them I'd planted my first seed.
Right.
Basically, I determined in 2014 the cannabis available on the streets, although it was beneficial to me, it was very rarely dry, it was very rarely cured. I didn't know what it was, whether it was organic or anything. Didn't know its THC and CBD profiles, so I had no control, no option. So then I started Googling and I found all these wonderful seed banks and all these wonderful descriptions, and I thought, well, I should choose for myself what I need. So I've selected various varieties of cannabis, different cultivars, different levels of THC and CBD, indicas, sativas, all those. I have a very small 60 centimetre square growing space. It's the smallest thing you can imagine. And I'm not self-sufficient, but I try. And the day I planted the seed, I'm not a criminal. I wrote to the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Drugs Minister, Health Minister, my local minister and my doctor, and the Department for the Domestic Cultivation Licensing for Cannabis, and told them I'm growing my own cannabis. Here's my human rights under why, here's my conditions for why, I'm supported by my medical professionals, nearly being killed by pharmaceutical drugs, I'm doing this for my health, I'm not a criminal. They wrote back and said, go back on your morphine or face 14 years in prison. So I wrote back in very eloquent terms and said, no, I'm going to continue growing my own cannabis. If you've got my address, you want to come and get me. And I've carried on.
Right, so there's been no repercussions coming off the back of that?
Touch wood. You haven't got any wood?
No.
Touch wood. I haven't been arrested yet. I'm in regular contact with my local police and things. I phoned them up and reported myself to them.
Right, okay.
But when the police burst...
I bet they didn't know what to do, did they?
They said, you're very honest. I admire your honesty. When the police burst, they come in with what available information they have, which normally is not a lot, so they're going hard and fast to secure evidence and witnesses. You don't need to go hard and fast against me. I'm slower than a snail. I can barely move my body. Do you know what I mean? So I phoned them up. Well, I'd started with the Undersigned.
Yeah.
This group kicks off. My local newspaper got wind, interviewed me. So then I've just been interviewed by my local newspaper. Now my kids' schools know, the local community, they might report me. I thought, what we're going to do? I'll phone the police and let them know. So I phoned up 101 because it's not an emergency, let's face it. And I said, can I speak to highest ranking officer possible, please? Well, what's happened? Well, nothing. I've been interviewed by a local newspaper. I'm a therapeutic cannabis practitioner, and I'm worried you may receive complaints from the public after this article. So I wanted to phone and give you the domestic contextual setting to my resident, so you know that if you have to respond to a public complaint and serve a warrant, all you have to do is ring my doorbell. I'll eventually get to the door, I'll let you in, and I'll show you everything you want to see and help you with all the inquiries. And the call handler said, well, very honest of you, can I ask you a question? Yes, of course. He said, how much pain does it take away? And I gave him a 20-minute talk then.
Right.
About all the history, the fact that the government were told in 1998 it's remarkably therapeutic and safe, they should stop prosecuting people like me, and they needed time to make patentable, marketable products. What did government do? They put that report that they commissioned on the Library of Science shelf. They set up the author as the director of medical GW Pharmaceuticals. They spent 21 years telling people cannabis is bad, it's going to make you mad, and putting people in prison. So that to me is fraud, conspiracy and terrorism. Because they have withheld information that was in the public interest, and they've committed fraud through abuse of position to gain personal gain. So when you've got Theresa May and Victoria Atkins in Parliament saying cannabis is bad for you, you all need to go to prison, while their husbands are involved in the cannabis industry out of the therapeutic benefits of cannabis, that makes them outright liars.
It does.
To the British public, whilst their husbands and their associated businesses are making hundreds of billions of pounds and dollars of profit. Now my family live in poverty because of my circumstances. They will be wealthy because of their husband's circumstances. So whether they're indirect invested in the business is irrelevant. Their husbands are benefiting and profiting. That means their lives are better because their husbands can benefit from this cannabis. My wife, my children, they suffer poverty because I can't even get a job because I use cannabis. I can't even volunteer because I use cannabis. I'm discriminated against. So I've got a bee in my bonnet.
Rightly so. I think rightly so. I think that's an incredible story. Where are you with the legal campaign at the moment?
Yeah, we're coming to a close of phase one, as we're starting to call it. Okay. So I found the solicitor, Robert Jeppy. He then found a human rights barrister that he felt had the tenacity required for such a case.
Yeah.
We then crowdfunded nearly £9,000 to pay the barrister to review some evidence to see if we can make a case. And then we had campaigning year, my chronic health. The solicitor changed firm, so it kind of pulled the rug and slowed us down. But now we've transferred back to the solicitor we originally had at his new firm, Robert Jappy with INT, and he's keen as mustard to get going again. Fantastic. He really liked the WTU and our aims. So we're hoping in the next 3 months to have collated the evidence required for the barrister that we will then submit to this barrister. They will then take off and review against international and national precedent, and to try and find the angle of approach.
For someone who doesn't know the court process probably as well as I should, how does that go, trying to take the government to court? Obviously it's not going to go to magistrates court.
Well, interestingly, I'm probably not far off as naive about and ignorant about it as yourself. I thought I'll get a solicitor then make a case. The aim is, our plan, with the evidence that we submit to this barrister,
Yeah.
to make a convincing and compelling argument that the prohibition of cannabis, the declaration of incompatibility between the Human Rights Act and the Misuse of Drugs Act. The two acts are incompatible.
They're in conflict with each other.
They're in conflict with each other. So again, freedom of consciousness. Well, I'm not allowed to use cannabis to expand my mind. I must only use alcohol. They're denying my freedom of consciousness.
It's crazy.
It's an insanity, especially when cannabis is 114 times less harmful than alcohol. So they're literally dictating the poison whilst denying a homeostasis regulating herb that can get you high if you dry it out and smoke it or eat it. And it's the getting high they're worried about, you see. Because if you imagine people get drunk, they often get discoordinated, discombobulated, I think is a great word for it. Get drunk, discordant, they can't form coherent thought, they cannot speak, they cannot move their body. Now I've sat and smoked cannabis from 7 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the morning, eating and smoking. It doesn't impair me in any way. I can still maintain intellectual conversation with my peers who are around me. You can't do that on alcohol.
No, you can't. No. Well, alcohol also brings those other things. Liver disease.
Well, this is the
failure,
other factor.
Blood clot.
We've got cancer. It causes cancer. It causes psychosis. It causes aggression. It causes depression. That's just a handful of main conditions.
Mental health as well.
Cannabis treats or alleviates. So we've been forced to take a drug that causes disease and mental health issues under the pretense that the one that we want to take causes the issues that the one that they let us cause, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
To me, the government have become drug dealers, and they are saying, you will take our drugs, you take anybody else's drugs, we're going to prosecute you and destroy your life with prosecution. Now, those drugs, you're allowed alcohol, you're allowed pharmaceutical drugs. Now, they've nearly killed me 4 times. Cannabis hasn't done that. Alcohol, how many times have I been sick as a dog and nearly died from alcohol? And it's part of our culture. I was a teacher. Oh, you're stressed, go and have a drink.
Yeah, have a whiskey.
You're in the police, drink. You're in the fire, drink. You're in the army, drink. They use alcohol to de-stress, but it's a depressant. Whereas cannabis, if they were allowed...
And it's addictive.
It is addictive. That's the thing. Far more addictive than cannabis. A tiny percentage. I think, is it 9% of people get addicted to using cannabis and 14 to alcohol? I might have to check those figures. I have got them somewhere, the comparisons. It's the safer of the two options. And my son got drunk at a party. Yeah,
right,
he's under 16 at the time. And can I go to my friends for a party? Their parents are there. Okay, son. There might be drink there, Dad. Okay, son, be responsible. Okay, I don't like alcohol, in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
And I had a phone call. I'd been trying to phone him and couldn't get through. Anyway, long story short, the parents of the household had allowed him to get obliterated on Southern Comfort. Unconscious in the garden, left for an hour before they thought they'd get in touch with me to come round and get him. And now I'm disabled, I can't get out of my car.
Yeah.
So all these teenagers dragged my inebriated son to the car. And they all thought it was hilarious. And then I had to have a safeguarding team visit my house because he's been drinking alcohol. And whilst there, this woman said, we know that teenagers are choosing cannabis instead of alcohol. We know they want to choose cannabis instead of alcohol. So the evidence is there that the current law causes more harm than good. The evidence is there that alcohol is more harmful than cannabis. The evidence is there that humans, adults and teenagers, adolescents, don't want alcohol, they want cannabis. And then the government is saying, you must not take cannabis or we'll prosecute you, but all you're allowed is alcohol. By the way, we'll have this celebration for this. Alcohol's pushed everywhere. Yeah, to me, it's a promoted, protected, preferred, poisonous recreational drug that the government push on you.
And is that for tax reasons?
I believe it's because the alcohol industry lobby, so not just pharmaceutical, petroleum, cotton, paper, all these industries that are threatened by hemp and cannabis industry bribe the government to keep the law the way it is. So it will be for the tax that they receive, but donations into the parties. They don't do anything for the people. It's all for the pound signs that they get offered.
You see that, and I see it in political circles. Obviously, like you mentioned, Theresa May's husband is part of GM Pharmaceuticals, or he's the director.
Philip May is a business relationships manager for Capital Group.
Right.
Capital Group happen to own the majority share of Bayer Pharmaceuticals, that happen to own the majority share. Let me think. There's one other in between. GW. Shit, sorry.
It's not Monsanto.
No, I don't think it is, but I've got a horrible feeling it is, and that's the worry thing. That's why I don't want to say it in case. Capital Group own Bayer, and the Bayer are contracted to GW Pharmaceuticals to market their products.
Right.
So the company that he happens to work for as a business relationships happens to be the majority owner of another company that happens to be the sole contractor to GW, that happens to be provided their cannabis from British Sugar, who's the director of whom is Paul Kenwood, who was married to our ex-drugs minister, Victoria Atkins.
Well, that seems like a very suspicious chain of coincidences.
We would call it a very close conflict of interest, personally, you know.
I would call that a conflict of interest, not a close conflict of interest. That is a conflict of interest.
It's how
that's monopolisation of the market as well.
But this is the thing, and in 2016 the UK was announced as the largest cultivator and distributor of, I'm going to use inverted commas that your friends can't see on the inverted quotes, medical cannabis. The UK was the largest producer and distributor in the world, but then they say it's got no therapeutic value, no you can't have it, and off you go to prison. How does that work?
It's madness.
Madness, it is. I wouldn't want to try and hold individuals to account for their deception, because I don't think that would be achievable. Personally, they got too much money and power. Let's be fair.
Yeah, but they're all part of the cogs of the same machine.
My worry is how many people have died unnecessarily. How many people have been prosecuted unnecessarily on a fundamental lie that cannabis is harmful, and that's what bothers me.
Yeah.
My brother, are you on a time limit? My brother was 14 when he was busted for cannabis first time.
14,
and the police harassed him after. He didn't like booze, he preferred to have a smoke. Alcohol made him fight, and smoke chilled him out. We live in North Wales, so we were harassed by the locals a little bit for being outsiders, English people. And eventually, long story short, he ended up in prison. And then whilst in prison, he became a heroin addict. And long story short again, he's now dead. So, you know, to me, all these young children that have been arrested and molested by the law for choosing cannabis instead of alcohol, they're all potentially my brother.
Yeah.
They're all potentially going to end up in prison or on a life of crime where they can't get a job because they've got criminal records, or end up in properly harmful drugs, and then losing their life.
I have lots of friends that have been in the prison system and that have come out different people.
Yeah.
You know, and for something that's trying to correct people and make people, you know, reassigned to society, does it really do that? I don't think it does.
I don't think it's about that anymore.
No,
it's
not.
about profit. They profit from the prisons. Again, it's become privatised industry, same as teaching, same as everything else, and this is partly the problem.
So where do you see the future of cannabis and medicinal cannabis and the legality of it in the UK moving forwards? Do you think there's a time frame to it? Do you think it's going to happen? I mean, I get asked this question pretty much every day of my life.
The first thing I have to do is unpick your phrase medical cannabis.
Okay.
If we've got time to discuss it.
Yeah, of course we have.
You know, Jack Herer is a well-known activist from the States. He has a variety of cannabis named after him, Jack Herer. That also, for a period of time, was utilised by the Dutch government to make their product Bedrocan.
Right, okay.
So, they grow Bedrocan, or Jack Herer, sorry. They cultivate Jack Herer and call it Bedrocan. It's a Schedule 2 drug, and they can make millions of profit and give it to patients. But if I cultivate Jack Herer in my cupboard at home, it's a Schedule 1 drug, and I'm suddenly a criminal. Now, I don't want to give my cannabis to anybody. Not that I would deny it to them if they needed it or wanted it. I just want to look after myself and not be fixed on these industries. Where do I see it going?
It's a big question.
It depends on whether people step up, actually. If it's left to the corporate machine, you'll end up with CBD products maybe if you're looking, 0.2% THC maybe if you're looking, which won't do anything for chronic conditions.
No, I'm a big believer in that as well. I think you need full spectrum.
You have to have all of it in there. They call it the entourage effect, don't they?
Yeah.
Someone explained it to me very well. Imagine you've got a load of workers that are wanting to go to a factory, and they've got to travel a distance to get to their factory to do their job, and they can all walk there, or the coach can come past and the coach can take them there and they can get there much quicker and do their job much more ably.
Yeah.
THC is the coach to all the other cannabinoids.
Right.
So it's the THC is the cannabinoid that carries all of the other ones around the body so they can interact and do all their jobs properly.
Yeah.
Not that we even know what they all are at this point either.
That's a great analogy.
And that's what someone shared me, I don't remember who, but I believe we need more of the CBD industry to back the activism, because they're only being allowed part of the party. You know, they think this CBD industry is great. Well, you've only got half or a part of it. Imagine if you had full spectrum, if you could use the whole plant in all its beautiful capacity.
Yeah.
And also, high THC cannabis is far more productive. So in terms of productivity for its industrial benefits and its oils and all the rest of it, high THC cannabis is far more productive. And again, I bring it down, THC elevates your consciousness. And they don't want you to elevate your consciousness, they want you to dumb your brain down, which is what alcohol does.
It does.
And that is why I believe they restrict us and won't allow us to have it. Because it connects strangers. You know, look at us, we're strangers. We're already bonded, you know.
We're not strangers anymore.
Exactly, man, nice. So it depends on who steps up, who brings the pressure to the plate.
I think the CBD companies, at the moment, most of them that I see about are in it for the money. You know, there's a great meme I saw, and it was like a guy dripping gold,
I know the one.
Like next to his Ferrari, saying, "I'm in it for the patients." CBD.
I remember having an argument with someone about that actually, because there was lots of racial assumptions there.
Yeah, connotations.
But aside from that, I know people here, cannabis, for example. BSB seeds. I'm just trying to think. Ali Bongo. Not everyone's after the money.
No.
Some of them, they just genuinely they
right
have benefited from the plant, and they want to help other people benefit from the plant, make their bread and butter at the same time.
Yeah.
They're not after making billions and millions. That's not what they're focused on. It's about getting the word out and getting the help out.
Educating and sharing.
Yeah, totally. So we have the greedy businesses and then the ethical ones, I would say. But we need people to step up for their rights. Until people stand up for their rights, well, you won't have any, will you?
Well, this is it. I mean, we
that.
live in a society, well, I live in the UK, I have a UK passport, and sometimes I feel like, you know, I'm captive in the country.
I feel that.
Just because I do, I do a lot of writing for various different magazines, and the reality of the fact is that in the UK, you do not have a freedom of speech. You might think you do, and they might teach it in schools to a certain extent, but when it actually comes down to legal ramifications, you don't.
Yeah.
And you have to be very careful of what you say and what you write. Or, you know, or they perceive that you should have that legally. And I think it's crazy.
It's control. It's all about control everywhere we look. If I had my way, there's over 10,000 varieties of cannabis, I believe. Everyone has a unique endocannabinoid system.
Yeah.
Who knows which one of those is the right one for you? And if they say, oh, you can only have these ones, let's say there's 400, you've still taken like 9,600 potential beneficial cultivars that I can't access. Now that's why I don't like this restricted model like Canada, for example.
Yeah.
You know, you can only grow licensed seeds. Well, that's convenient for the business that owns the seeds and gives the licenses. And again, it's all about money.
Profit. This is the Canadian model. There's some of them that I've found out doing a bit of research as well. They're umbrella companies, so they own the legal licensed producers.
Yes.
They also own part of the dispensaries,
Yes.
so they get a better profit off buying from their own.
So it becomes virtually a monopoly cartel all over again.
Yeah, that's
but
exactly what it is.
illegal.
Yeah,
They're the legal body of it, I suppose.
it's crazy, isn't it? Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for coming on the Hydro Chronicle podcast, Phil Monk. Just for the people that are listening, if they want to contact you or they want to donate or they want to get involved, find out about it, where can they find you, on what mediums?
The best place would start on our website, www.wtuhq.org. From there you can find the links to our Facebook community.
Yep.
The merchandise page explains about how our community is organised and how we don't seek profit, but we seek to generate money, and we don't sell, we give everything away in terms of our merchandise. And then also there's a link there to the Crowd Justice fundraiser page, which is perhaps the most important one.
Yep.
It's on pause at the minute because we've adequate funds for phase one.
Okay.
Let's say when, not if. Yeah, positive affirmation. When the barrister turns around and says, okay, you've made your convincing, compelling case, this is your way forward, we'll then have to open a second fundraiser for the phase 2 of the campaign. It could be anything between £50,000 and £150,000. So, if people could go and look at that page, there's a lot of information there. It's taken us a lot of time to compile and put there. Go through all the hyperlinks, check it all out, have a look for yourself. By the end of that, if you believe in freedom, come and join the group. We're fighting not for cannabis, but for the freedom of choice.
That's fantastic. Again, Phil Monk, thank you so much for coming on the Hydro Chronicle. Cheers, buddy.
Pleasure and an honour. Thank you.
I just wanted to say a big thank you for listening to the Hydro Chronicle podcast. It was an absolute pleasure to have Phil Monk on. If you want to find out a little bit more about what he's doing, you can go to www.wtuhq.org. Thanks again for listening. Today's episode of the Hydro Chronicle podcast featuring Phil Monk was brought to you by the Growers Guide series of books. Available now from www.thegrowersguide.com.